Have you ever woken up one day and felt like a stranger to yourself? Like piece by piece, you've given away parts of who you are, until there's nothing left that truly feels yours. Life is full of compromises, but some things should never be traded away. Your values, your passions, your self-respect, these are not bargaining chips. They are the foundation of a life well lived. And yet, too often, we sacrifice them for approval, convenience, or love that was never truly ours to begin with. Today, we're diving into 7 things you should never sacrifice for anyone, no matter what. Because once they're gone, reclaiming them is never easy. So stick around, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's worth protecting, no matter who comes into your life. Let's get started. 1. Your self-respect. Your self-respect is the foundation of who you are. The moment you compromise it to keep the peace or gain approval, you hand over control of your life. At first, it's subtle, letting a disrespectful comment slide, tolerating behavior you once found unacceptable. But over time, those small compromises add up, and before you know it, you're questioning your worth, doubting your instincts, and wondering how you lost yourself along the way. I learned this the hard way. There was a time when I let someone's words dictate how I saw myself. It started small, offhand remarks like, "You're too sensitive," or "Maybe you're just not good enough." I didn't push back. I told myself it wasn't worth the argument, but the more I tolerated, the more those words sank in, reshaping my self-image. I found myself second-guessing every decision, hesitating where I used to be confident. One day, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Reclaiming my self-respect was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It required breaking free from the patterns I had allowed to form, standing up for myself even when it felt uncomfortable. Because here's a truth that people rarely admit. Most will respect you only as long as you don't challenge their comfort. The moment you start setting boundaries, refusing to tolerate disrespect, and choosing yourself, you become a threat. They'll say you've changed, that you're being difficult, selfish. But in reality, all you're doing is refusing to be used. And this is where Stoicism comes in. Epictetus once said, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" Self-respect isn't about arrogance or refusing to compromise. It's about drawing a line between what is acceptable and what is not. It's about having the courage to walk away from people, situations, and even careers that require you to betray yourself. Society glorifies self-sacrifice, often at the expense of self-worth. We're taught that being agreeable, flexible, and accommodating is the path to being liked. But if making others happy requires you to diminish yourself, it's not kindness, it's self-sabotage. True self-respect means choosing to stand firm in your values, even if it costs you relationships, opportunities, or approval. The moment I chose self-respect over comfort, everything changed. Some relationships ended, but looking back, they were the very ones weighing me down. In their place, I found people who truly valued me, who didn't need me to shrink myself to fit into their world. And most importantly, I regained my confidence, my sense of worth, and my inner peace. So here's the truth. Respect yourself enough to walk away from anyone who doesn't respect you. Stop justifying mistreatment just because you understand where it's coming from. Compassion is one thing. Being a doormat is another. If you lose yourself trying to meet someone else's expectations, you've handed them power over your life. And no one, not a friend, a partner, or an employer, has the right to take that from you. Because once self-respect is gone, everything else, your confidence, dignity, and purpose, begins to crumble. The next time you're asked to compromise on your self-worth, ask yourself, is this a price worth paying? If the answer is no, stand your ground. Those who truly value you will respect it, and those who don't, let them go. 2. Your dreams. Your dreams aren't just optional extras or distant fantasies. They are the fire that gives your life meaning. They are the reason you wake up with purpose, the force that pushes you beyond the mundane. And yet, the world will often ask, sometimes even demand, that you set them aside. That's a great idea, but don't you think it's time to be realistic? That dream is fine for now, but when are you going to grow up? Society tolerates small, reasonable dreams, the kind that fit neatly within its expectations. But the moment your dream is big, unconventional, or risky, people start to get uncomfortable. Not because your dream is impossible, but because it forces them to confront the fact that they gave up on their own. I remember the first time I shared a dream of mine. The response? A raised eyebrow and a single word: ambitious. It wasn't encouragement. It was a polite way of saying, that's out of your league. And for a moment, I almost believed them. I almost let their doubt become my own. But here's the truth. The people who tell you to give up on your dreams will never be the ones who have to live with the regret if you do. That regret will sit with you. Dreams aren't just goals. They are pieces of your identity. To abandon them for the comfort or approval of others is to dim your own light, simply because it shines too brightly for them. Some will say that chasing your dreams is selfish, that it means neglecting responsibilities or failing to be practical. But what if the most responsible thing you could do is pursue them? What if, by following your passion, you inspire others to do the same? What if your dream is the very thing that could make a difference, not just in your life, but in the lives of countless others? Think about how many people let go of their dreams in exchange for stability, only to find themselves middle-aged, reminiscing about what could have been. They'll tell you they had good reasons, jobs, families, obligations, and those are all real and valid. But obligations should not become a life sentence. If you let your dreams slip away completely, you risk living a life that no longer feels like your own. Now, I'm not saying you should abandon everything and chase your dream without thought. But if it's been sitting on the back burner, simmering while life passes you by, ask yourself why. Who told you it had to wait? Who convinced you that it wasn't worth pursuing? At the end of the day, your dreams are part of what makes you feel alive. To follow them, no matter how crazy they seem, isn't chasing fantasy. It's aligning your life with who you truly are. So the next time someone says, "That's unrealistic," smile and say, "Maybe it is, for you." Keep your dreams alive. 3. Your time. Time is the one thing you can never get back. Yet, how often do we give it away as if it's limitless, like spare change in our pocket? Everyone wants a piece of your time. Friends, family, work, even strangers asking for just one small favor. But here's a truth most people ignore. Your time is not infinite, and once it's gone forever. I used to be the person who said yes to everything. Someone needed help moving? Sure, I've got a few hours. An extra project at work no one else wanted? Count me in. But after a while, I realized something. I was mentally drained, physically exhausted, and worst of all, my own priorities were being neglected. My days were packed, yet I wasn't actually living. And the people I constantly showed up for, they were rarely there when I needed them. People expect you to be available when it's convenient for them, but how many of them truly respect your time? There's an unspoken rule in life. Your time is up for grabs, but theirs is untouchable. That's why learning to protect your time isn't selfish, it's necessary. Stoicism teaches us to value what is within our control, and your time is one of the most precious things you own. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. If you don't guard your time, the world will gladly take it from you." Now, let's be clear. I'm not saying you should ignore people or refuse to help those who truly matter. But not every request, invitation, or favor deserves a yes. If you constantly prioritize everyone else's needs over your own, who's looking out for you? The answer is simple: no one but you. And when you finally realize this, it's both sobering and freeing. Here's something that might surprise you. Being a little selfish with your time actually makes you a better person to those around you. When you prioritize what truly matters, you become more present, more energized, and more fulfilled. You stop feeling drained, resentful, or frustrated about yet another weekend lost to someone else's to-do list. Instead, you show up fully, because you're no longer running on empty. So ask yourself, where is my time going? Am I spending it on things that bring me joy and fulfillment? Or am I giving it away like free samples at a supermarket, hoping for approval, gratitude, or just to avoid guilt? Remember this: you are not an unlimited resource for others to exploit. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to guard your schedule fiercely. You are allowed to put yourself first sometimes. Because, in the end, when you look back on your life, you won't remember the endless meetings or the favors you did out of obligation. You'll remember the moments you spent doing what you loved, with the people who truly valued you, not just your time. So protect it. Once it's spent, there's no getting it back. 4. Your mental health. Your mental health is the foundation of everything in your life, yet it's often the first thing we neglect. You wouldn't run a car on an empty tank and expect it to keep going for miles, but somehow we expect our minds to push through exhaustion, stress, and sleepless nights without breaking down. But here's the truth: without your mental health, nothing else matters. No amount of success, approval, or money can compensate for a mind that's burned out and a heart that's running on empty. I had to learn this the hard way. There was a time when I believed that pushing through was the answer to everything. Too much work? Just stay up later. Feeling overwhelmed? Keep going. I took on more than I could handle, said yes to people who didn't value my well-being, and convinced myself I was managing just fine. Until I wasn't. Burnout crept in. The things I once loved felt dull. Every morning felt like waking up to a marathon I hadn't signed up for. It wasn't until a friend said, "You don't seem like yourself anymore," that I realized they were right. I had been so consumed by stress and obligations that I had become a shadow of who I once was. That was my wake-up call. The thing about mental health is that it's not something you earn by toughing things out. You don't have to hit rock bottom before you're allowed to prioritize it. Yet, so many people treat it like a last resort, something you only deal with when the cracks start showing. But ignoring it won't make it go away. It only makes things worse. Think of it like a warning light in your car. Sure, you can pretend it's not there for a while, but eventually something will break. We live in a culture that glorifies the grind, that celebrates always being on, as if needing rest is a weakness. But what's admirable about waking up anxious, going to bed exhausted, and running in circles for a life you're too drained to enjoy. Yes, there's a time to hustle, but there's also a time to rest. And rest isn't laziness, it's maintenance. Setting boundaries, saying no to extra pressure, unplugging when you need to. These aren't selfish acts, they are acts of survival. If someone tries to guilt trip you for taking care of yourself, step back and remember, they're not the ones who have to live in your mind. Your mental health isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. Protect it fiercely, because when you do, everything else in your life will feel a little lighter, a little brighter, and a whole lot more worth it. 5. Your boundaries. Boundaries aren't just invisible lines, they are declarations of self-respect and inner peace. Yet, how often do we let them slip, just to keep others comfortable? It might seem easier in the moment to say yes instead of no, to stay silent instead of speaking up, to go along with something instead of pushing back. But every time you sacrifice your boundaries, you lose a piece of yourself. At first, it's subtle, a favor here, an extra task there. But over time, the weight of always accommodating starts to crush you. I used to be that person, the one who always said yes. A friend needed a last-minute favor? Of course. Work needed me to stay late? No problem. I told myself this was loyalty, that it proved I was reliable. But I started noticing a pattern. The more I gave, the more people expected. And the more I ignored my limits, the more exhausted and resentful I became. Then came the breaking point. I had stretched myself so thin that I had nothing left to give, but I kept giving anyway. That's when I realized, either I respect my boundaries or I live at everyone else's mercy. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about letting the right people in. The people who genuinely value you will respect your boundaries, but there will always be those who test them, people who believe they are entitled to your time, energy, and emotional labor. And those people? They will take as much as you allow, and then some. Here's the hard truth. People who don't respect your boundaries don't truly respect you. They respect the convenience you provide, the way you make their life easier, the fact that you never say no. Real respect is honoring someone's limits even when it doesn't benefit you. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. Maybe for you, it means not answering work emails after hours. Maybe it's saying no to a friend who only reaches out when they need something. Maybe it's walking away from relationships that drain you. Whatever your boundaries look like, they deserve to be honored. And yes, people will test you. They'll guilt trip you. They'll act like your boundaries are obstacles for them to overcome. But their discomfort is not your problem. It's a sign that they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries in the first place. The strongest relationships I have are with people who understand that I am not available 24/7, that my time and energy are not limitless, and that my no is not a personal attack. And when you start setting boundaries, you'll find that the right people, the ones who truly care, will respect them too. Setting boundaries takes courage. It requires disappointing people sometimes, but you are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to live a life that honors your needs, your dreams, and your well-being. So protect your boundaries fiercely, because if you don't, no one else will. 6. Your financial independence. Financial independence isn't just about money, it's about freedom. It's about having the ability to make choices on your own terms, without being at the mercy of someone else's generosity or control. Yet, too often, people give up their financial independence without even realizing it. Maybe it's relying too much on a partner, staying in a job that underpays and undervalues them, or depending on family for support long past the point of necessity. The danger: dependency limits your ability to walk away. It ties your hands, making it harder to stand firm in your decisions and live life as you see fit. I used to believe financial control wasn't that important. As long as I was comfortable, what did it matter? But over time, I started noticing the subtle ways my lack of independence affected me. Decisions that should have been mine required someone else's approval. I hesitated to pursue what I wanted, even when I could afford it, because I wasn't fully in control. And honestly, that realization stung. Financial independence isn't about selfishness, it's about self-respect. When you have control over your finances, you have control over your life. You're less likely to stay in toxic situations, tolerate mistreatment, or sacrifice your dreams out of fear. Many people think that in relationships, combining everything and relying entirely on each other is a sign of trust. And while shared finances can be part of a healthy partnership, losing your financial autonomy is a different story. It creates an imbalance where one person's financial power can dictate everything, from where you live to what you prioritize. No matter how good someone's intentions are, relying on them entirely puts your freedom in their hands. And then there's work. How many people stay in soul-crushing jobs simply because they fear losing a paycheck? They dream of switching careers, starting a business, or taking time for something meaningful, but financial dependence keeps them stuck. This is why financial independence is non-negotiable. It doesn't mean you have to be wealthy. It means you have options. It's about budgeting, saving, and making intentional choices so that if life throws you a curveball, a breakup, a layoff, an unexpected change, you can stand on your own. One of the greatest lessons I've learned: when you have financial independence, people can't control you. You can set boundaries, say no when something doesn't feel right, and walk away from situations that don't align with your values. You don't have to stay in toxic relationships or endure mistreatment just because you can't afford to leave. Of course, building financial independence takes time and discipline. It means managing money wisely, resisting unnecessary expenses, and investing in yourself. But every step you take toward financial stability gives you something priceless: freedom. So don't let anyone convince you that giving up your financial independence is a small price to pay for love, loyalty, or comfort. Because the truth is, when you sacrifice your financial autonomy, you're not just giving up money, you're giving up your ability to choose. And no relationship, job, or temporary convenience is worth that price. 7. Your passion. Your passion is the fire that fuels you, the thing that makes life feel alive instead of just a series of obligations. And yet, in a world that prioritizes practicality and expectations, passion is often the first thing we abandon. We tell ourselves it's a luxury, that it doesn't pay the bills, that we'll get back to it someday. But here's the harsh truth: someday never comes. Passion isn't a distraction, it's fuel. It's what keeps you curious, driven, and excited to push beyond the mundane. Without it, life becomes mechanical. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. How many times have you heard someone say, "I used to love that, but life got in the way"? That's the quiet surrender of a part of themselves they may never reclaim. I know this because I almost let my own passion slip away. Writing stories used to consume me. I could lose hours creating worlds, characters, and ideas. But then came real life. The expectations of a proper career, the pressure to focus on what was useful. I convinced myself that writing was just a hobby, something I could live without. And for a while, I managed. But the more I pushed it aside, the more something inside me felt hollow. I tried filling that space with other interests, but nothing quite lit me up the same way. Eventually, I realized that giving up on my passion wasn't just sacrificing a hobby. It was abandoning a part of myself. So I made time for it again, even if it was just a few hours a week. And the difference was undeniable. That small spark, that connection to something I truly loved, it bled into every area of my life. I felt more energized, more fulfilled, even in my practical pursuits. That's what so many of us forget. Passion isn't optional, it's essential. It's what keeps life vibrant. And no matter how many responsibilities you have, there must be space for it. Without passion, we're simply existing, not truly living. People might say, passion doesn't pay the bills. But here's the thing, neither does burnout, regret, or a life half-lived. No job, no amount of money, no external success will ever replace the deep satisfaction that comes from doing what sets your soul on fire. Passion is also contagious. When you pursue what you love, others notice. You become more alive, more engaging, more inspiring. You remind people of their own forgotten dreams. And that ripple effect? It can change lives. Of course, following your passion takes courage. Some will scoff at it, dismiss it as a waste of time. But those people don't live your life. They don't feel the emptiness of neglecting what truly matters to you. Only you know what gives you purpose. Only you can choose to hold on to it. Sometimes that means saying no to obligations that drain you, stepping back from people who don't understand, sacrificing short-term comfort for long-term fulfillment. But if you protect your passion, if you let it thrive despite the noise, you'll find a deep sense of joy that no external validation can replace. So, don't let anyone convince you that passion is optional. Don't fall into the trap of thinking you'll get back to it someday. Start now, even in small doses, even just a few minutes a day. Because passion, more than anything else, is what makes life meaningful. And that is something you should never sacrifice. And there you have it, 7 things you should never sacrifice for anyone. These aren't just ideas. They are the foundation of who you are. In a world that constantly pressures you to compromise, to shrink yourself to fit expectations, remember this: your self-respect, dreams, boundaries and passions are non-negotiable. They are what give life meaning, what make you you. So as you move forward, protect these parts of yourself fiercely. Stand firm in your values, honor what truly matters, and never let anyone convince you to give up what fuels your soul. Life is too short to live on someone else's terms. If this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you haven't yet, consider liking and subscribing. More powerful content is coming your way. Stay true to yourself. You deserve nothing less. See you in the next one.